China's Higher Education Reform by Chris Thompson. Since the mid-80s, the Chinese government, mostly through its Ministry of Education, has made plans to reform its higher education institutions, starting with the Chinese Communist Party's decisions on education governance reform. The goal is for China to build a world-class education system, one it hopes to draw in the best faculty and administrators to develop talent and innovation. Ultimately strengthen an economy China wishes to shift from labor and manufacturing to one based on research and development, true innovation. Over the past 2 decades, China and its Ministry of Education have implemented one plan after another, promising more resources and financial support to reach very specific and measurable goals by 2020. With just 5 years left and surely more reform, has China created a roadmap to building its world-class higher education systems. As the Chinese Civil War ended in 1949 with the Communist Party in control, the People's Republic of China was born. By October of 1949, the Ministry of Education was created, which oversaw all aspects of all education within China. The government during this period oversaw everything from curriculum design and textbooks to student admission and graduate planning. Tan notes that during the Cultural Revolution, all formal education is put on hold, leaving a generation of citizens without the opportunity for higher education. By the end of the Cultural Revolution with the death of Mao, education returns and reform becomes a popular debate to strengthen the future of China. In 1979, the president of Fudan University, along with 7 other presidents, published an article in the People's Daily calling for reform and requesting more autonomy for the university. China's first steps towards reform started in 1985 with the Chinese Communist Party's issue on decisions on education governance reform. The root of the reform was to decentralize education, allowing some autonomy to both the local government and the university. This can be seen in the Ministry of Education switching from a state-controlled model to a state-supervised one. Zhang et al. Note that the decentralization was highlighted in breaking up the monopoly on textbooks that prior had been required by the state, as well as giving the universities the ability to create their own plans towards innovation. The next major shift in decentralization came by the way of the National Reform and Development Plan on Education, followed shortly thereafter by Project 211, which committed government funds to the creation of over 100 universities. Project 211, created by the Ministry of Education in the mid-90s, at the time becoming one of the biggest investments in higher education in China. Selected universities could apply for government funding to increase its research capacity and innovation in science and technology. The plan asked that each university that is funded become a world-class department or leader in a specialized subject field. Kai and Qi note that the aim of the program was for each university to take a leading position in the country's economic and social development, as well as to increase its international competition. Project 985. Created in May of 1998 by then-President Jiang Zemin, the plan saw 2 universities receiving the largest funding and another 7 receiving slightly less. By 2007, the plan had expanded to 39 universities. 9 of these first fall under the Project 985 have become what can be considered China's Ivy League. Monies received are to build towards new research centers, hosting international conferences, attracting world-renowned faculty and researchers, and to support its own faculty and professional development through international conferences. After the initial phase, which included direct funding, the second phase asked the universities to submit proposals that were geared towards the creation of science, research, and development, essentially innovation creation. Kai outlined the 5 main tasks of Project 985 as innovating institutions, building up faculties, building up platforms and bases, creating supportive conditions, and creating international exchanges and cooperation. Issues facing China's higher education. Through its efforts on higher education reform, China has created the largest university system in the world and has the highest enrollment of students, recently peaking at 1 million. Even with this level of enrollment, many in the rural parts of China are at a disadvantage in access. A contributing factor is the National College Entrance Examination, which takes place once a year and has been criticized as a high-stress memorization test which can remove access to those students who are more highly creative. Since the mid-80s, the government has worked towards decentralizing higher education. However, all efforts have been considered slow and small. Questions still arise as to when we'll move towards academic freedom and more westernized models of higher education. Gaps between reform and outcomes. With all its financial resources and reform, China has struggled to create its goal set forth since 1985, which was creating world-class universities. Kai and Key point that part of the problem exists merely in the definition or concept of what a world-class university within each attempt at reform meant. What may be holding China back is that most world-class universities have academic freedom and an autonomous government. Some of that governments are board of directors all the way to the president. In China, the board of directors are only a recent addition and one used more for fundraising as they have no authority over the campus. The majority of campus presidents are hired and relieved by the Ministry of Education. Further, between academic publishing and citation and the universities of China are far behind other famous academic institutions. One alarming note is that no academic from mainland China has won either of the most prestigious awards in science, the Nobel Prize and the Fields Medal. By 2008, China only held 473 triadic patents. Triadic patents mean filings that relate to where the inventor and the invention are all from the same filings. When we compare this to the US, which had 14,000 plus, China's talent doesn't seem to be present. Finally, the hopes of the reform have been tied to shifting the economy of the country from labor and manufacturing to research, development, and innovation. At this time, there's been little effect on the research and development on the gross domestic product. The new reforms. 3 new reforms since 2006 have been enacted. The first, the National Medium and the Long-Term Program for Science and Technology Development, created by the State Council, has an implementation life from 2006 through 2020. The plan looks to increase the national research and development to 2.5 of the gross domestic product, and that 60% of the gross domestic product will be influenced by science and technology. Further, the plan will attempt to increase indigenous technology to 70% while reducing foreign technology to 30%. The next, the Project of Quality Assessment of Undergraduate Programs, was created by the Ministry of Education in 2007. The plan created an assessment model through the Higher Education Evaluation Center, overseen by the Ministry of Education. The assessments occur every 5 years, which focus on teachers and institutions. The plan calls for higher education institutions to produce strong human resources and high innovation abilities by 2020. Finally, Plan 2011, which is a joint effort by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Finance, in 2011 was created with the sole focus on innovation. Considered an extension of Project 211, Project 985, the major difference in Plan 2011 is it open to all higher education institutions, state-controlled or otherwise. Plan 2011 is divided between 3 phases over 4 years: developing and assessing, applying, improving, and assessment. Implications on American education. Though some of the universities of China have been active for over 100 years, its higher education systems are young. From the beginning of decentralization of the mid-80s to the merging of systems via Project 985, China has proven a heavy financial commitment towards higher education reform. However, the current issues that face its systems and the gaps between the plan and the outcomes leave China in yet another period of reform. At this time, the implications on American education are hard to see. One of the benefits of the citizens of China is that they have the open doorway for international education. And really for China is the hopes that their citizens, their students, will return home with that knowledge. As China continues to explore the reform, they may eventually realize that in copying more Western models of higher education, they will then produce many world-class universities.